When the power sector was opened up to investments, there were stories like Enron and Cogentrix that went around. Later on, again in the 2000s, the power sector picked up thanks to a company that was, and the person at the helm of affairs of that company is our guest for this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Sushil Maroo. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome to the retreat. Sir, we'd like to know, how was it back in the years of the late 90s and 2000? What was the change that really happened? How did the power sector really pick up, and how did everyone get so excited about the power sector when it was actually gone into the doldrums in the late 1990s?
See, when the power sector generation opened up in 1990, in fact, the country was going through a massive power deficit, and peak deficit was about 13% at that point of time. And there were cities and cities and cities where the 6 to 8 hours the power cut used to be there, and people used to have small generators in their homes. That was the time the government started reforms in power sector, first with generation, and they came out with the 20,000 megawatt based on naphtha, which did not fly because naphtha price went up very high, and then come up that okay, let the generation come up in coal-based, thermal coal-based section. So the large number of power plants that started coming up in coal-based. So that was a pretty good fillip to the generation sector. Then came the Electricity Act 2003, and the power sector was opened up completely. Power, which was like a regulated commodity, was allowed to come up as a free commodity in the market, and the power exchanges came up, open access system came up, where the companies were encouraged and allowed to generate power and sell in the market, and because thanks to the Electricity Act, the consumers more than 1 megawatt was entitled or given the power to buy power from the market. The open power exchanges came up, and I had the experience of dealing with the power exchange when they were really set up, and we discussed each other what they should do and how they should develop and what should be the guidelines. So that was the time when generating companies could sell their power through power exchanges to ultimate consumers, and through open access system arrangements, the consumers were encouraged to buy power from 5 days to a year, and through exchanges the opportunity came up to sell power in hours and hours, peak time hours, 5 hours, 10 hours, every 15-minute cycle came up, and that really revolutionized the whole sector. Now when this started happening in 2007-8 around, and the demand which was suppressed came up all of a sudden, that power which became available, people were really starving for power. Distribution companies started buying this power from these sources available, and the media which became available, and the power prices went up very high in the merchant market, because it is called a merchant market. So it jumped from 3 rupees to 7 rupees and 8 rupees and 9 rupees because this sector, this particular merchant sector was very, very small compared to the overall power, so the people could afford to pay that. But as the time passed, more and more power companies came into this game, more and more power was made available, the prices started cooling down, and now what we see that it's a different game altogether. Now it's selling in a merchant market has become extremely difficult because the prices have gone down even below the cost of power generation. But this really encouraged the power companies to come up and set up more power plants, and that helped the sector to grow.
So what do you think is the problem with private sector investment in the power sector? What does the private sector need? What clarity does it need from the government to ensure that it gets a return on capital, that is able to return the capital it borrowed from the banks, and to have a sustainable model of business?
See, in the we have seen the goalposts changing in the policies, and that really given a big jolt to the private sector power companies. One is like the cancellation of coal mines on which the power plants were set up. That was never thought of, that was never planned, and power plants were set up based on the coal mine as a pithead, and suddenly the mines went away. Now one has to bother about the railway lines and about the roads to bring the coal of a massive quantity, and think of the pollution and think of the protest that will come along from the villagers from where the road comes in. So this has created a massive problem. Two, it also has taken away the raw material security. since the country does not have that kind of coal available, and the import is not possible because we don't have that kind of infrastructure at port, and again rail and road is lacking, and the Coal India cannot supply the total coal, so that caused a massive problem. To environment approvals and pollution related approvals and other government approvals took inordinately long time, which was never thought of, because in a normal course you presume that all approvals should come in a normal time frame, and when it becomes extremely abnormal and it becomes very difficult to get it, that really impacted the commissioning of the project. Cost went very high, interest became very high, and the plant started becoming unviable because arranging that additional funding became extremely difficult. We can't go back to the banks and ask for funding again and again. So those were the massive problems which the private sector faced.
So summarizing it, sir, we see that
It's about
cuts.
Sorry. Yeah.
Roll again, right? 1, 2, 3. So summarizing the problems, we see that at one end, power generators are not getting adequacy of coal supplies or certainty of coal supplies, and at the other end, they're not getting certainty of payments being received by either. They're not able to sell their power, they're not able to get a PPA from the DISCOM, or even if they sold the power, they're not sure of when they'll get the money and if they'll get the money at all. Do you think in this scenario, generators will now be incentivized to look at forward and backward integration, where they'll take control of coal mines to ensure that they have captive coal mines, and that they go into the DISCOM business also to ensure payment certainty? Is that a model that you think can be viable?
So it's very difficult because coal mine primarily is a different ball game than setting up a power plant and generation of power plant. The companies went for coal mine because the coal was not available and it was in scarcity. So to ensure the raw material supply, the companies went for coal mines. But if the Coal India can provide the coal, no generating company is very keen to go and acquire coal mine. And based on the past experience, I think not many companies are very keen to go and acquire coal mines and develop a coal mine, because acquisition of land has become extremely difficult now. Cost has gone very high. R&R has become very difficult, and other approvals have become difficult. So the generating companies will wait, and if possible, try and buy the coal from the market or from Coal India or coal linkages, whatever is possible, rather than acquiring mines. That's the first priority. Second thing is PPAs have become very difficult. They are not coming forth because the health of the distribution companies is not very good. They are running into losses because of many reasons. There are the distribution inefficiencies, the collection problems, political issues with distribution companies. So it's very difficult to handle a distribution business, and I don't think many generating companies will really go for distribution business to go for a integration to ensure timely payment, because that's a different skill set. Distribution company is a different skill set. So maybe few companies can decide, but others will not go. But delay in collection from distribution companies is really affecting the health, financial health of the generating companies very, very severely.
Finally, sir, how has been your experience at the IPAI retreat?
This is pretty good. IPPI is doing a wonderful job because they bring the companies and regulators together, where regulators really hear from companies what are their viewpoint freely, and what are the problems they are facing. Like when I also talked about the resolution issue, dispute resolution. There are cases which are pending in all regulatory commissions. Hearing is done, decisions are reserved for final order, and it takes months and months to get the order. Here we can discuss all those kind of problems and how those problems are seriously affecting the performance of the generating companies. Generating companies can reduce the tariff if efficiency is brought in every area of operations, and the final tariff can also be brought down. Regulators also talk about the dilemma what they face from various legal issues and what kind of problems they face. So it's a very good platform to bring both of them together, free exchange of ideas, and discussion on various new areas like the solar is in thing now, and we all hear and understand, and regulators also hear and understand what's happening in solar front. So I feel this is a pretty good attempt and very good effort and quite successful one.
Thank you, Mr. Sushil Maroo, Head of Essar Power. Thank you for coming to the retreat, sir.
Thank you.